Right. So, hey, welcome back, John. It is just awesome to see you. For people who don't know, this is John Holmes. He is partner here in Wellington for Private Enterprise. Full disclosure, John looks after inside and our kind of accounting and financial advisory, and has kind of acted as our, I suppose CFO might be another way to call it. So whenever we need some high-level information, we go to John, and he's kept us out of mischief for probably 4 or 5 years, maybe more.
Yep.
But if we start at the beginning, John, who would have thought that back in maybe 2000, 1999, when we first kicked into Wellington, or I first kicked into Wellington, two Taranaki boys, we come down, randomly meet in Wellington, and geez, you make it to partner, and I make it to my upstairs office.
It's hard to believe, isn't it? It's hard to believe that was 20 years ago, and we're a couple of horrible little bogans, you know.
Yeah, a lot's changed. I can now wear a different shirt.
Yeah, that's right.
Hey, so John, thanks so much. I think what I'm trying to do is just get some information out there for in this session. Maybe it's about businesses, leaders, managers, but there might be something in here for an employee, for a contractor. That's really useful. I think two parts of the conversation. Obviously, we want to talk to COVID, but I suppose first thing is I really want to recognise at the end of the day, you run a business, you've got a team under you. Just how's it gone for you personally, being a leader? How's it gone for you with your people, KPMG? Just give us a bit of perspective.
So look, we're a 1,200 person practice in New Zealand across 5 different locations, and we are we're independent from the rest of the KPMG world. So I really do, we're affiliated, but we're independent. So the interesting thing for me is that we are facing into the challenges of COVID just like everybody else. We are a privately owned business. All of our partners in New Zealand are owner-operators, and we're all responsible for our own part of the business. So as you say, mate, I'm a private enterprise partner, which means I primarily work with smaller privately owned businesses. Fundamentally, the owner is the decision maker, is the entrepreneur. Everything ultimately rests on the shoulders of him or her or that small group of owners, which I love working with those people. I was so lucky when I do think about 25 years ago when I started my career. I was so lucky to land where I did, because it's just been the most amazing journey, which I'm still on, of course, and it satisfies me no end working with those sorts of businesses.
I think just as a precursor to the COVID conversation, finance has been disrupted, if that's the right framing, but a lot of it's going online, a lot of it is changing. Tell us a wee bit about what finance is now. And I say that because I think there is obviously still some compliance, we can't get past that, but it's really changed in my eyes over the last 5 years, but maybe it's an extended period of time. What do you do now?
Yeah, so that's a good question. I mean, you're right. When I think about when I started, and it was 8 or 12 column ledger papers that you wrote out by hand, and you had all the debits and credits going out to the side. It was a good way to learn, but it was a shitty way to do business. But where we've come to now, where we've got cloud-based solutions, everybody's digital. Our clients expect us to be across their data all the time, and rightly so. So the compliance aspect of our portfolios are still a significant amount of work, but relatively speaking, it's getting less and less. So, it used to be 80% of what we did, and now it's 40% of what we do. And, I can see a time, and maybe COVID is a disruptor that needs this, but I can see a time where, for example, the government doesn't require tax returns. It pulls the information directly from a digital accounting system like Xero or MYOB. And that data is, you need to take responsibility for that data as it goes down to the IRD, but that significantly reduces the work for a compliance annual accounting perspective, and it makes it more real time. And so we're that's what we want to do, and we're pushing hard into that area. And I mean, hopefully you've seen that, and people in the market hopefully have seen that. That's where KPMG as a firm is going, because it's the future. And frankly, I don't want to charge someone 10 grand to do a set of accounts. I want to charge them 10 grand to do a whole bunch of advisory services, and charge them a couple of grand for a set of accounts. That's where it should be.
Yeah, I agree. I think, and we'll see that move. And I think, that leads really well into the conversation we're having at the moment. You just mentioned you've got a whole, broad range of accounts. what have people been asking of you, John, in the last 8 weeks, maybe 10 weeks even, the ones who might have seen something early? Where have you been spending your time? Can you give us maybe not stories, but just a couple of insights, and then we'll definitely move into the what do you recommend? What are the recommended actions? But starting with just where have you been spending your time?
So there's kind of two main areas. The first one was that kind of micro business related issue of holy shit, this is real and this is going to impact my business because I can't open for the next month, or we didn't know how long at that stage. So a lot of conversations about making sure the business was ready for it, looking at the balance sheet, understanding what the cash flow position for that particular business was going to look like. Could we get through this with the government subsidy? Because I think probably by then we knew the government subsidy was coming. And did the business understand the longer term impacts of this? I mean, we're 8 weeks in. Tomorrow we're a week out of level 3 into level 2, but things aren't back to normal yet, and we don't know how long it's going to take for things to get back to normal. So those early conversations were kind of all around that. And then over the course of the next 2 or 3 weeks, it was around the government subsidies and the government support packages, which have been amazing. I mean, they've put billions of dollars into our economy, and a lot of that has been directed through our business, our businesses in New Zealand. But, it was changing all the time, and there was a lot of uncertainty, and the ministers were making announcements, and then the officials had to interpret those announcements, and then some packages came at the back end of it. So a lot of work had to go into not only the owners, but also us supporting what that looked like. Were they eligible for the support? Did the business need it? And what would that mean for the medium to long term? I mean, even in our own business, I think it's been publicised now that we asked our people to do a 15% salary sacrifice. We put that in place for a few months, and in return, we're giving people what we're calling COVID leave. So the salary sacrifice is matched by 12 days, effectively annual leave that they get to use in advance of any of their other annual leave. So we're not asking our people to burn their own leave, if you like, in order to get through this. And that's been a great step. I think our people have really appreciated it, but they've all recognised that everybody had to dig in. And I've seen that across the entire New Zealand economy. Everybody has dug in, and it's been great. Now we've just got to get out of this as quickly as we can.
Yeah. When you've been building your forecasts, and maybe this is an unanswerable question because every industry is different, every position of balance sheet might be different. But broadly, how long have you been trying to look out? I say that for something like Inside, we just went out 12 months. We went quite aggressively. We down forecasted 12 months out. Which at the time I went, that feels quite drastic, but as I keep looking at it, I go, I'd rather know what my bottom looks like. But what is the ranges of reforecasting you've been doing on top line sales and then subsequently, I imagine, OPEX?
Yeah, so in most situations, and I'm not sure whether this is just our approach or others will be doing it as well, but pretty much 12 months on a monthly basis and 2 or 3 scenarios around it. We did for most clients in those early, 8 weeks ago, we did what does a 4-week lockdown look like and what does a 12-week lockdown look like? And then the third scenario was typically, okay, well, if it's a 4-week or an 8-week lockdown, depending on the client, what does it look like if we come out of that more slowly? So in other words, a more conservative ramp back up of revenue. And then each of the scenarios are different because every business is different, of course, and their expectation around what that ramp up might look like. But it gave a really good opportunity to consider under 3 scenarios what the end of the year looked like, what the cash burn over the next 12 months would look like, and what could we do to cover any cash holes that we had.
Yeah, and as you've been going through it, what are the major areas of impact, whether that's particular sales lines or whether that's in the OPEX area? Where has the big impacts been? Or if you're sitting there as a leader manager and you're going, I think I've touched on this, but have I gone deep enough? And what I mean deep is in deep into detail, not necessarily deep into the cut.
Yeah, those revenue assumptions were critical, especially for obviously for retail businesses who were shut. Some of those businesses were able to redeploy their people, and so we were able to do some scenario analysis around what does that other revenue stream look like, but a lot of them weren't able to. So that moved the focus from the revenue side to the expense side, and absolutely, it's all coming back to me now, all the conversations I had with people around what does it look like if our people do take a salary sacrifice? Can we keep them, passing on the wage subsidy? We want to pass as much as possible on, but have to understand the rules. Looking at going to the bank and getting support from the bank and perhaps going interest only, going to the landlords and getting some sort of deferral of rental or a rent-free period, and on a line-by-line basis, looking at those costs. I think also having conversations with your suppliers, including your accountant. I don't want my accounting fees to be a reason why a client's having a sleepless night. So we were able to go into to have conversations with those clients around deferring payments or putting a payment plan in place, or using a third-party intermediary to debt fund the fees. It's that sort of stuff. And then the last thing, which all of these things we're talking about are current as well for most businesses, and it's also tax. So the government put a lot of concessions out early on around tax payment expectations and loss carryback rules and a whole bunch of things like that. How do they impact on the particular business? And cash flow impacts of tax payments is significant for a lot of businesses. So how can we mitigate the impact of that? Perhaps hold some money back from the IRD and instead use that money to keep people employed or to keep key suppliers paid. With New Zealand being an ecosystem of smaller businesses, there's some suppliers that can handle deferrals of payment, but others absolutely can't. So as part of the conversation is about making sure you've got that balance right.
I get really nervous because I think, and I say this going, even I've learnt, what a really good cash flow forecast looks like versus a random cash flow forecast. Because when times are good, cash comes, and that sounds a bit, I don't know, easy to say, but I go, when things tightened up, we were fortunate. We've just hired a guy, and he's been exceptional with kind of creating a cash flow forecast and realizing that the balance sheet comes, before the cash flow forecast, and just a whole lot of items through that, that can, stick and make it hard. John, tell us a wee bit about, and I'm going off script a bit, but building a cash flow forecast, can you just tell us about some of the elements? Because I think this is really going to be hitting home right now. It's cash, and truly cash means money in the bank, but I think some people confuse it with money in the P&L, which is so different.
Yeah. So I think the point you made there about the balance sheet is a critical point. I mean, you've got to make your balance sheet work as much as possible. And what we've found with the work we've done with our clients over the last couple of months, but we kind of knew this was an issue in New Zealand as well. A lot of businesses have really skinny balance sheets. They don't have a lot of capital sitting in the business. They don't have quick access to working capital either, other than the owner putting his or her hands in their pockets and dropping it into the business. And that's okay. That works in an ordinary situation, but it doesn't so much work in a COVID environment where there's not an easy flow of cash. So I suppose two ways to answer your question there is having an absolute focus on that balance sheet and the working capital and doing as much as you can to get cash in and defer payments out without being a dick about it. And then the other thing is understanding what are your options for getting additional funding. The government guaranteed bank debt scheme was a really good idea in concept, but as of last week, I think they'd issued millions of dollars compared to the billions that they had budgeted for, because fundamentally that scheme was based on the bank's lending criteria and the bank being comfortable to advance additional money to that business. And in a lot of cases, the banks just wouldn't do that, which is why the government's subsequently brought in the Inland Revenue cash debt scheme, which is probably more about funding cash flow for those sorts of businesses. But coming back to your point, it's bloody difficult if you don't have a strong balance sheet and you haven't got easy levers to pull to to bring more cash into the business, it's a really tough road for those businesses at the moment.
Yeah. And so knowing what you know now, where are you focusing, or where should a business be focusing its energy, today? Where do you think the best bang for buck is still, or currently, what kind of conversation, if you're sitting down with, a variety of people, or just people listening to this, what would you be saying?
Yep. So I think, generalization, New Zealand businesses are pretty low margin businesses, and there's a number of reasons for that. We have a very small economy, so if you're involved in domestic sales, it's it's difficult to drag money out of Kiwis. We've got a lot of pressure from imports, so that makes it difficult. That drives the cost down, and then if you're in the export market, we're a long way from anywhere, so exporting can be quite costly. So I'm not suggesting that, I'm not sort of telling New Zealand businesses that they're not doing a good job because they're low margin. I think that's just the reality of our environment. So we have to, a bit like I was talking about before, we have to really focus on our digital capability and make sure that we're doing things digitally using appropriate tools that minimize our cost to serve using individuals. So not that I'm suggesting we need to make a whole lot of people in our businesses redundant, but I think there's definitely an opportunity to sharpen up our internal business processes by using digital technology. That will differ for different businesses, but it's around your systems and tools, your sales and marketing, connecting with your customers, etc. And I think there's a big capability gap. We're getting more and more of these good tools that are out there, and you think about the Xero or the MYOB ecosystem if you're looking at from a financial perspective. But there's a capability gap. People either don't have the tools in because they don't understand how to use them, or they have the tools in but they're not fully utilizing them. And I'm not suggesting that we're no different. We have tools that we don't fully utilize in our own practice, and we need to do a better job of that as well. That's where you're going to see that profitability increase. Mm-hmm. I think the other area, and again, this is a broad generalization, but a lot of the businesses who didn't know their customers well enough have performed really poorly. They haven't been able to understand what's been happening in their markets, and they haven't been able to pivot and adapt to what their customers needed in a COVID environment. And that's such an important thing to do. There will be more crises in the future. Hopefully they don't cut as deep as this one, but you never know. And we've got to be sure to pivot quickly and understand what our client and markets need.
Yeah, I think one of the points we were going to touch on was, who has weathered the storm? Is that one of the key differentiators you've seen? What are some of the differentiators between who has weathered the storm or is weathering it, if that might be a better way to frame it, not knowing what's around the corner?
Yeah. So look, it's no different to a business as usual activity. The key businesses who are doing the best in this current environment are the ones that have amazing leaders. So the people, the leaders are ones who've got a genuine empathy for their people, and they're inspiring their people to think innovatively. It's not on us as the entrepreneurs necessarily to come up with the ideas as to how we're going to better service our clients or markets or how we're going to pivot. If we've created an environment within our team where everybody knows that they're able to speak up and give the idea and that they'll be listened to, and then it may or may not be acted on, but it'll be taken on appropriately. That's kind of the key, and those businesses have done really, really well. And the other one, of course, is where you've got very clear, strong directional leadership. So being able to say early on in this crisis, we don't know exactly where this is going to go, but we understand what we have to do to get through it, and this is what our direction is, and being very clear about that across the team. And if I can just, I'm not pandering to him, but if I can give a little shout out to our CEO, Godfrey Boyce, he's just done an exceptional job of that. The week or so before we had the level 4 lockdown, we knew what was kind of coming. We had a partner meeting and we were talking about comms to our people, and Godfrey, one of the partners, I think it might have been me, suggested that probably he should do video updates to everybody, and just on a regular basis, and they turned out to be weekly, update everybody on what's happening and be pretty open and honest with, you can't tell the people everything, but you can tell them an awful lot. And you could tell that he was somewhat uncomfortable with the idea immediately, but he acted on it, and you should see the feedback he gets. It's gone through the roof because they were able to see he was genuine, he was empathetic, he had a really clear sense of direction. Maybe we didn't go in the right direction, every step of the way, but that doesn't matter if you're bringing the people with you. And so that's kind of the key factor.
Isn't it funny, I said, we had Samantha Gadd, who I think but, so we had Sam on last week, and interestingly, the conversation got to, we need really good leadership. That was cultural, from that lens, it was about HR, humanity, cultural perspective, but, who would have thought the CFO of yesterday would talk about leadership, culture, communication? I think it does go to show things are changing, doesn't it? And I suppose going on from that, the bit where I get most nervous is when I chat to people and some of the leaders are a bit scared to be the leader, and I can understand how you'd be scared to be the leader at the moment, just from the point of view of what is the pathway. But I think you've summed that up, really amazingly. I think if you can, be the leader or pretend to be the leader, either way, someone's got to lead through.
Make it till you make it.
Well,
I've been doing that for 25 years.
Because it's not black and white, is it, at the moment?
No, not.
How you manage your finances, how you manage your people, but done with your word, empathetically, done as virtually personal. I think it says a lot, and it's a big lesson that's come through twice already. Is that I think if anyone's a leader at the moment, now's the time to really believe it. Whether you do or don't believe it, people are looking at you, want your support, and you don't have to know the answers. You just have to know the questions to go, can I get some help around the table?
Yeah, look, totally. And I think you can take a risk, because if of any time that people are going to be understanding of you, trying the best and taking a risk for them, it's now. And the reality is that if you do throw it out there and it doesn't work, well, that's fine. You probably haven't lost anything, but you may get a significant upside.
Yeah.
And at the very least, your morale and culture is going to go through the roof, because people will be thinking, man, I'm really pleased that guy is my leader.
Yeah. I was just going to ask whether, how optimistic are you? So 8-9 weeks in, how optimistic are you when you think about your clients that you work with? How hard will you and their finance teams have to work? What's left to do?
Well, I'm an optimist anyway, so my answer is that I'm massively optimistic. I think we're going to have, the realist in me says we're going to have some very, very tough few months. Great that we're open and that we're operating. I'm a little concerned about what might happen if we get an uptick in the number of COVID cases in New Zealand again, because I don't really want to experience level 4 and level 3 again. I'm hoping that we can manage that as a population. Let's assume that we do. I think we're pretty well positioned because we've got a strong economy with a really good, albeit small. I see we've just ticked over 5 million, so we're bloody small in the scheme of things. But we've got a good reputation internationally. We can probably take this opportunity to go for a bit more of our quality rather than commodity products overseas. And there's a lot of good quality going offshore. The opportunity to do more of that. If we can open up a Trans-Tasman or maybe a Australasia Pacific bubble that allows travel between the countries, I think that will be incredibly valuable for a lot of retailers, and especially for our tourism operators. That's the one area I'm most kind of fearful of is our poor tourism operators, along with our hospitality people. That's where they're going to do it tough. But if we can, as the government's kind of talking about, open a Trans-Tasman bubble by early August, that's really positive. I think we can weather it through to then. And if we get a ton of Aussies over here skiing, there might be an aspect of that we don't like as a population, because our ski fields are going to be chock-a-block. But at the same time, it's a good outcome for the country. So I've gone around in circles a little bit there, but I think fundamentally I'm really positive about our opportunities. I think the government has, to say it again, that they've done a really good job with their support. It's been quite measured. It's been quite deep. We've got a problem for the future that we have to deal with. But if we can get our economy up and running well, then that problem becomes less of an issue than if, I wouldn't want to be somewhere like Italy or the UK or the US at the moment, for example.
Yeah. Jon, you're
I'm not sure
sitting
if that
on
covered.
some. What's that?
I'm not sure if that covered what you were asking.
No, absolutely. Here's my last question for you. You're sitting on a board. We've brought you in as a CFO finance specialist. What information should be coming to you at a board level or at a leadership team level as a minimum, and in what regularity?
So you're thinking about it from a governance perspective?
Yeah, I'm just go, what should we be, again, we're managers, we're leaders, what are the 2 or 3 metrics that need to be coming through? And, if you had a keen eye, what would you be telling what information would you be giving up to your leader? Or if you were guiding the board or an MD to go, hey, you need this amount of information from your finance team. It's the minimum amount of information you can get.
So I would look at in that context, I would look at the finance team as being kind of part of that wider long-term scenario planning for the organisation. So I think strategic planning as a catch-all is the key here. So a really solid forward focus of where you want the business to go, supported by financial metrics, and you can't achieve what you don't measure. So if you have some strong strategic planning that says we're going to achieve this over the next 3, 6, 12 months, and then have the KPIs in place to be able to deliver that, that's what should be coming up to the board. And that the board should always be reflecting back on that strategic plan and understanding how the strategic plan has been delivered against. And if it hasn't, why not? What are the barriers? Again, the board should stay very strategy based. They shouldn't fall into operations. So the finance stuff that's coming from a finance team that's operational business as usual, that should be taken as read. You shouldn't really be talking about that at the board meeting. Your focus at the board meeting has to be on that future. I think to do that well, you have to be thinking. Right now, businesses need to be thinking about that market and their customer needs and how they're changing. I think thinking about innovatively about the opportunity that creates. So maybe that does mean pivoting the business and planning for that kind of medium to long-term growth by providing, as I said before, with that leadership, clear direction, areas of priority, and then what the performance metrics are going to be to know that you've gotten there.
Yeah, again, it's really interesting listening to you, and it may not sound it because you probably hear it all the time, but isn't it funny? We're in the middle of COVID and everyone's thinking about week to week, and it's interesting. We had what I call our board meeting last week, 2 weeks ago. Simon, who works with us as our board advisor, his really lasting piece of advice out of that meeting was, I want you to think about, 31 March 2021. I want you to look at what you've achieved. I want you to write that down. I want you to write that vision so that you, exactly to your point, we need to start moving in a strategic direction, acknowledging all of the unknowns at the moment. But as a leader, it was really refreshing. It opened my eyes back up and it set me on a forward path. Controlling elements of what I can control. So again, certainly fits with what I've heard. I really like it.
We have this this concept that we work towards with our clients called enterprise DNA, and it's essentially a way of identifying the kind of 8 key traits that a business ought to have in place. And what we're seeing through all of the work that we're doing with our businesses at the moment is that the ones who are doing the best today and the ones that will do best in the future have the traits of having a really strong strategic anchor in place, which is exactly what Simon's talking about there. Understanding that customer intimacy, because at the moment, more than ever, you've got to put the customer at the heart of everything you do and really focus on what they need. And then that deployment discipline, and whether that deployment discipline is around your systems and processes or the way you are organizationally structured or whatever it might be, it's about delivering on those other 2 pillars. And they're the areas that we're asking our people to focus, or our clients to focus on at the moment.
Jon, last question, and it's not necessarily to pitch you, but it's just to help. There'll be so many businesses going, Jon, I've heard what you've just said. You've told me to reforecast or set a strategic plan for another 12 months. At the same time, to review my OPEX line by line, do a cash flow forecast, make sure I link to the balance sheet. how do they get that expertise if they don't have it sitting right next to them?
Yeah.
What's some tips for you, from you? Who can they go to?
Yeah. Yeah. Look, I think whenever I'm asked this question, I'm conscious that I don't want to, have a crack at other accounting firms. But the fact is, there are a lot of really good forward-thinking firms like ours out there. I wouldn't for a moment think that I was unique. I'm unique as an individual, but in terms of the services that we provide and so on, there are plenty of great firms out there that do this. If your firm or your trusted advisor is, or maybe not even a trusted advisor, just the person that you use for the service is not able to provide the things that we've been talking about today, you got to go somewhere else. It doesn't do your business or your people or your own state of mind any good to stay with somebody who's not delivering this sort of stuff. And I should also say that in my experience, the people who are not delivering this sort of work are not getting paid any less. The compliance fees for our businesses that have got accountants are no different to the ones that have got proactive business advisors. It's just a different kind of relationship, and it's a different kind of engagement. So whether that's me or KPMG or another firm, I just encourage you to go out and get it, because it will see you through this, absolutely no doubt.
And your part, it sounds like I'm pitching you or not. I just go, you're part of the regional partner program, for example.
Yeah.
I think through, is that Well NZ, but if someone else was, or I imagine most of the regional economic development have access to referral options for people like yourself, or...
Well, yeah, absolutely, mate. So one of the key things that came out of, I don't think it came out of the budget, I think it came before that, was the government put, I have a feeling it was $12 million, but I can't remember exactly, for in the bucket for business consultancy support through New Zealand Trade and Enterprise and the local EDAs like Wellington NZ or ATED in Auckland, etc. So they are, those guys at the EDAs are outstanding. They provide an amazing service. They're amazing go-betweens, and they, to your point, Troy, they absolutely understand who's really good and who's not when it comes to professional advisors. They'll point you in the right direction. And right now, I think that's a large part of what they're actually doing, is making sure that businesses have got good, strong teams around them to provide them with advice. And by the way, that's not just accounting or finance support. They have people that do customer intimacy and sales support, IT support, any number of things that you can think of, whatever your business needs. And I'm happy to pitch the EDAs and pitch NZTE, because they're both really awesome organisations, and they will add a ton of value to your business as well.
Yeah, and
I was just going to say, the beauty of them is they don't cost anything. The government's, why would you not use them? If you're not using them, you should.
Yeah, and I only say that going, one of the big, and you mentioned those words, I love it. What keeps you awake at night? I think, that's what you've got to write down on a piece of paper and take to get solved. And, there are expertise and experts out there, and it doesn't have to be firm-based, could be individual-based, but speaking to Sam as well, you just got to seek it out. It's not, and she caught me out, which is kind of right. It's not a template. Hey, take this template and here's the answer. You need to be able to talk that you need to be able to talk kind of about what the context is and how it works for you and how to do it. And there'll be pieces you can do yourself, pieces the firm needs to do, or pieces another partner needs to do. But at the end of the day, I think the aim is to get to sleep at night. And I think
totally.
A bit more information.
Yeah. And I think in some ways, if you've got a good advisor, they'll be the ones that aren't sleeping at night because they're worried about your stuff. And I know I've done that more than once, that's for sure, especially over the last 2 months.
Yeah.
But I think the other thing I'd say is, and again, this is just to build on the point that Sam was making too. Ask if you do get referred to somebody, ask to talk to their customers and their clients, because they'll be the ones that will tell you how the relationship works.
Yeah.
Don't listen to me, listen to Troy.
Yeah, no, it's good. And I think, again, anyone listening, I'm not trying to pitch John inside anything. I'm really just saying, but please seek out some expertise. At the moment, it's getting funded, but the real ambition is I really want the mental health that comes with it, the sleep that comes with it. With a bit more clarity becomes the vision. With the vision becomes a plan. With a plan becomes an action. With an action, you've got people coming with you. I think there is a way through it, or I always say there's a way through it, or there's a way to know there's not. Both of those are equally important.
Yeah, well, absolutely. If you can identify the path you shouldn't take, that's just as important almost.
Yeah.
Yeah.
John, it is awesome catching up with you, my friend. Good to see
Cool,
you
mate.
working out of the home office. Trying it myself. It's still working, even though we can get back in.
Yeah.
John,
This isn't my office, mind you. I had to come downstairs because my Wi-Fi was so scratchy. So I'm sitting in our lounge, but I am trying to, as we were talking about before, I'm not for a moment saying that I'm an inspiring leader, but I am trying to have that tone from the top where we're asking our people to work remotely, and I think I should be working remotely as well. So
yeah,
it's working really well, and I think our guys are really enjoying it. Actually, I think it's a nice change of pace. But I think everybody's also looking forward to spending a bit more time with the team, a bit more closely. At the moment, we're working 2 separate teams, a blue team and a white team, alternate weeks, which is great because we're getting some degree of human contact with our friends from work, but it'll be nice when we can all be in the same place together again.
Yeah, awesome. John, have an awesome day, my friend.
Cool, mate. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.